I'm Jason Sherwood. I'm the production designer for Rent live on Fox, and you're listening to The Go Creative Show.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Consoli. I am a director and owner of BC Media Productions, and this is The Go Creative Show, the show dedicated to creative professionals in the video production and filmmaking industries. Today we welcome Jason Sherwood, the production designer for Rent live on Fox. Jason and I discuss blending his design directions with the iconic Broadway show, working with the director and cinematographer to adapt Rent for live TV, the importance that Rent plays in today's society, and so much more. The Go Creative Show is supported by Rule Boston Camera, Buy Rent Create at Rule.com, NewsShooter.com, Essential News for real-world shooters, Hedge.video, the fastest way to back up media, Shutterstock.com, and PremiumBeat.com. Premium, royalty-free music and sound. First of all, can you even believe that Rent has been around for 20 years? 20 years! It's insanity. It makes me feel like I'm 100 years old. But it also makes me feel good because Rent is still relevant 20 years later, right? It's going to be put out there. It's going to be distributed to an entirely new audience. And that makes me feel great because I was such a huge fan of the show. I think the issues it tackles are extremely important. And having this show, be just as popular today as it ever was makes me really, really happy. Now, it's going to be live on Fox January 27th, which is exciting. That's going to be a really fantastic show. And very few people know anything about this show. It's been under wraps. What's it going to look like? What are they doing? I can tell you people. Jason Sherwood, who's on the show today, is the production designer. He is the one that made this thing happen, of course, with a team of other people, yes. But his vision is strong, and his vision was a driving force behind this production. And guess what? He gives us a few little secrets. So for those of you that are hearing this before it airs live on January 27th on Fox, you are in for a treat. We also talk about Jason's work with Sam Smith. He did his most recent world tour. He did all the production design for it. And we talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. It's not just about Rent, basically, what does a production designer do? How does a production designer work with the cinematographer and the director and the choreographer? And I mean, think about it. We're taking a Broadway show, we're putting it live on TV, changing the whole way the thing is experienced. It's really exciting. And we get the inside scoop thanks to Jason Sherwood. Again, the show is going to be live on Fox January 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be a good one, so you guys should tune in. But before we jump into our interview with Jason, I want to talk about Hedge. What is Hedge? Well, Hedge is a backup software for filmmakers. It's also extremely fast, reliable, accurate. You can keep track of everything. You can import multiple sources and send it to multiple destinations all at the same time. So it's perfect for creating multiple backups on set. It's all about backups, people. You know this. You know this. Personally, I never leave set without having two backups of all my media. So for me, I take all the media cards from my camera operators, in my audio techs, behind the scenes photographers, everybody, throw it into Hedge. I set all of my destinations. And for me, I have two backup drives. So I've got my sources, I've got my destinations, I press transfer, and I just leave it there. And because I have the Hedge Connect for my phone, the Hedge Connect app for my phone, I get notified when the transfer is done. And it's going to be done fast. It is going to be fast. So it's fast, it's reliable. You know everything is being backed up correctly. So you have the speed, you have the reliability, you have the ease of use. It's everything that I want. They're constantly updating the app, so you're always going to have the latest and greatest. And here's the thing. They have a variety of licenses you can buy. So you can get the full license, and with the Go Creative Show code at checkout, you get 20% off. More on that in a second. But you get the full license. There's a free option, and then there's also project licensing. So if you just want to use it for one project, you can. So I encourage you to get the full version, and you can get 20% off of the full version simply by going to hedge.video/Go Creative Show, or simply typing in Go Creative Show at checkout in the coupon code area. Get 20% off the full license, and you will be so happy that you did. Hedge.video/go creative show. All right, it's time to jump into our interview, and it's a good one with Jason Sherwood talking all about the production design work on Rent, live on Fox, Sunday, January 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern. So I'm here with Jason Sherwood. He is a production and set designer for countless theater productions and television events. It's amazing. And we have him on the show today specifically to talk about the upcoming Rent live on Fox, which I am so excited about. Jason, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're doing Rent. This is an iconic show. I mean, it's celebrating its 20th year. It's going to be a live broadcast on Fox the same way that I think, what else did they do? They did Hairspray, they did Grease. So this is there's now a lineage here of these live Broadway shows on Fox, and you've got a big one coming up. How does it feel?
Oh, it's absolutely like a dream come true job. I mean, I grew up loving this show and saw it on Broadway as a young teenager, and it really was sort of one of those shows that just sort of dug into your heart. And it's that way for a lot of people. A lot of people sort of have their Rent story, and it's really special to get to be a part of this. I mean, it's an intersection of like so many things that I love. It's Broadway. It's the world of live television. It's got a concert vibe because the show is a rock opera. It's really sort of just a wonderful confluence of a whole bunch of things that are, at what I love to do.
How'd you get involved with it in the first place?
So I'd been doing a bunch of sort of music tour work the past few years in television performances, a lot of work with Sam Smith and Michael Greif, who is the stage director, and Mark Platt and Adam Siegel, who are producing this on Fox. Asked to meet with me to speak about the project. And I think they were just sort of taking a bunch of, sort of meetings with people who they thought might be interesting or interested. And, I came in with a real knowledge of the piece and knew a lot about it and knew sort of what I would want to see as an audience member. And so I spoke to them about that, and we sort of all responded to each other's enthusiasm and sort of general sense of, similarity of approach. And they asked me to be a part of it, which was a really good day.
Oh God, you must have freaked out. Do you get,
yes.
In that moment, do you kind of get nervous? Even though, I mean, you've done so much stuff leading up to this. There's no question of your ability. There's no question of your ability to handle this thing. But even in that position in life and in your career, do you get kind of that lump in the throat moment when you have a job like this?
Well, the thing that was sort of exciting was the incredible production designers who have designed the last bunch of TV musicals on NBC and on Fox are really like pros and legends in my field, who have many Broadway shows and Tony Awards and nominations and all these things. And I'm earlier in my career. I'm 29 years old, and so it was this opportunity to just sort of walk into this meeting and say, they're definitely going to be meeting with candidates who are more experienced than I am and who have sort of, a shinier mantle than I do. But I have a perspective about this show, and I have a lot of love for it and knowledge for it. I could sing the whole thing front to back right now. And I basically just came in a bit hot, I guess, and said, this is what I would want to see. And this is sort of what I would expect as an audience member. And this is the way that I would want to tell this story with you. And I think that rather than just sort of being sort of surface level and saying, here's my work and this is, how I work and I'm a designer and, here's my experience. I came in with an idea and with a thought, and it just so happened that, it was part of how they were thinking about things already. And so it worked that way. And I was nervous in the sense that I really wanted to be a part of it, but I didn't sort of have that sense of anxiety because I just left it all out on the table. I was like, listen, I love this show. I'd die to be a part of it. This is how I think, I see it in my head. Is that how you see it? And it was like a really good first date.
Is that your normal way of trying to get the jobs? Like, do you go into every job you get with a full idea ready to go?
Oh no, and I don't think I even, had a full idea here. The benefit or my favorite thing about my job is, how many people I get to work with to shape a thing. It really is I think theater slash, television, movie making are highly collaborative art forms. And I certainly would much rather be in a room with five other people hashing it out than alone by myself, as a lonely painter. But
But you still went in with, you said you went in hot, you went in saying this is, you had a vision for it. How are you explaining that? How are you sharing that?
I basically, I went in and I was like, listen, it should feel as live can be. And that was really what they were going after as well, which is that, live band, live audience, a sense of inclusion in the room. I said it should feel like an intersection of a pop star concert, rock show, and this Broadway musical and an art installation, and that there should be an immersive element to it. And those were, a bunch of buzzwords for them as well. So what that meant, was something that we figured out over the course of weeks afterward. But those sort of on principle ideas were important because some of these live musicals, based on the style of the material that they were working with, such as, A Christmas Story, which a lot of this team had worked on, were very, presentational and much more like, much more sort of proscenium based, the camera in one area and the action in another, and not sort of having this sense of immersion or 360 or integration. So, coming in with that point of view, I think really gave them the indication that I, had a finger on, what they might be interested in.
So what can we expect from your set designs for this upcoming Rent?
Totally. It's interesting. There's stuff we can share and then stuff that we're sort of holding on to as a surprise. And I think the primary thing that I'm really excited about sort of sharing with everyone is part of your question, which is set designs. I think it really is sort of a design, as opposed to, some of the other shows relied on multiple stages, multiple environments. And we like to say that there's sort of an immersive quality that we're all under one roof, and that the show sort of exists in a large installation-like way, as opposed to sort of series of backlots and smaller sets and that kind of thing. And so there's something I think that's going to be very sculptural and evocative of the period. Rent takes place predominantly entirely in New York City at the height of the AIDS crisis, and it's a time in New York where sort of the physical environment as it was very dark and often dreary. You had tent cities popping up in Alphabet City. You had squatters, this sense of sort of people really, really struggling. But then these sort of giant streaks and interjections of color. You had, get artists like Keith Haring doing giant mural work. You have sort of the entire sort of bohemian culture of Alphabet City in the East Village and the Lower East Side, and sort of what those people wear. And so there's this really sort of fun tug at the darkness of the world and the fact that Rent takes place predominantly at nighttime, and then sort of these blasts of color that sort of streak through it. And so it's been really fun to sort of embody those two things simultaneously and sort of find the balance. The show also takes place around Christmas time for nearly 60% of it. And so sort of finding the through line between the light and the dark has been a wonderful sort of thematic bit of visual storytelling, and then also a unique challenge in our space.
That was something that I was going to bring up, is because when I was looking through your website, learning more about you, I saw a lot of color in the images that you have on your website. And I'm thinking to myself, Rent is not the most colorful show. Like it sort of, I guess it depends on the direction that people are taking it when they're putting it on. But the sets there's a lot of gray. There's a lot of darkness. It takes place at night, like you said. And I was wondering how you were going to kind of put your creative spin on something that has a lot of darkness in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, I was from the jump really, really drawn to all of the different mural artists and graffiti artists and sculpture artists that were sort of working at that time, and wanting the space to, instead of evoking a ton of literal environments, really, really getting at how people take the drab space that they're in. Mark and Roger live in in a loft space that is in an old music publishing factory. And so how do these two guys, who one is a musician and one is a filmmaker, sort of imbue that with, the vitality and the livelihood of the world that they liveliness rather of the world that they live in, and then their artist friends. And so it's like sort of creating the neutral space and then bringing into it, this larger exploded sense. And the great thing about Rent as well is it takes place essentially in a neighborhood. And so the idea of creating a community of spaces, a community of environments in an immersive way that people, can travel to and be a part of, and that don't have to be rendered in entirely, highly realistic ways, it creates this opportunity to be sculptural and abstract and to use light in really dynamic ways, which is, one of my favorite things to, really, really have a close relationship with my lighting design collaborator, who in this case is Al Gurdon, and really just sort of harness the sculptural quality of the room and its immersive nature.
Now, did you have a lot of creative freedom designing these sets, or were you kind of bound to what we saw in the film, what we've seen on Broadway?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We are starting from scratch, essentially. If anything, we've wanted to make sure that we landed the iconic images that people sort of expect to see in a way from the Broadway musical, but absolutely shy away from, that work is iconic and of a particular period within the period of the show. Yeah. And we wanted to do something new, and that was entirely ours. Now, Michael Greif was the original Broadway stage director as well. And so he is, he's tied to the DNA of what was created originally. And Angela Wendt, who did the original costumes, is designing the costumes for our show as well. But,
oh, wow.
What blows me away about the two of them and their work and their artistic process is that they throw the baby out with the bathwater every chance they get, for the most interesting idea or the next idea. And it's not that the show is contemporary or updated in any way. It's very, very true to what was done originally, but just as a new group of people examining it in 2019, it assembles for a different contemporary idea. And so essentially we wanted to make sure that we sort of steered clear of anything that would feel too much like it was harkening back. Now, it still is very much Rent. So I like to say that we sort of look back while we're reaching forward with the design. And, so it still sort of embodies the sort of rough nature, the bohemian nature, the sort of ragtag, a piece of chewing gum and a string sort of sensation of the show, but it's able to sort of expand and to grow and to be something else. I think one of the things that's at our benefit is that a lot of the characters in the show are artists. Maureen is a performance artist. Angel makes her own clothes and is incredibly sort of crafty. Is a instrumentalist as well. Builds this sculptural tree. And because of that, the mediums in which they work, the way that they present themselves, all of those things are open to interpretation. So it lets us sort of fall into other visual categories for things and not be sort of stuck on what was seen. Now, we do want to serve up some of the iconic images. A long, long table of people sitting is an iconic La Vie Boheme image. Yeah. And, how we're serving up that in the show, I think, being a diehard fan myself, is going to be very satisfying and then very surprising. It's sort of allowing us to sort of land the moment, the satisfaction of the familiar and the thing is beloved, and then sort of take it to the next level.
Now, I know you can't give too much away, which is driving me crazy, but I know it can't be done. But you did say something a few minutes ago about 360. And if you're able to, I'd love to talk a little bit more into the differences that you had to or how you approach this differently than like a stage performance for Broadway. I mean, the perspective is totally different. It's immersive. You can go around the entire set. How are you adjusting the way that you design to fit that ability?
Totally. I mean, the original Broadway production of Rent was in a proscenium stage Broadway house, and elements of it sort of came out into the environment, but the action of the play took place on the stage, which meant the audience sat in one place and they looked all in one direction at the stage. And the beautiful thing that we get to do, particularly on live television, is use the camera as the aperture, whereas the proscenium is a fixed thing. The camera can go anywhere. The first two times I saw Rent on Broadway, the first time I sat at the back of the mezzanine, and the second time I rushed the show, I think for like $10, and sat in one of the first rows, if not the first row.
Wow.
And it was like a close up and a wide shot. And what we get to do with the show on television on the 27th of January is we get to sort of ride the line between both. We get to come in close and be with the characters and establish an intimacy, and then swoop out and establish the scale of the space or the scale of the group or their community or their environment or their neighborhood. And so what it creates is a lot of opportunity and a lot of, responsibility, in the sense of we're not keeping the camera or the audience in one place and the action over in the corner. We're inviting you in to sort of be a part of it. It has an immersive quality. And so it means that there's a ton of choreographic work that goes into that, for camera, for lights, for sound, for the actors. Everybody is dancing together and have to be sort of to the same tempo, to the same step, or we sort of expose something that we don't want to expose. And it requires a lot of coordination and a lot of sort of creative storytelling thoughts. We've spent a ton of time as a group sort of moving through the show and staging it. And so it creates a lot of challenges, because on a stage you're protected. You have wings, you have places to move things that they're hidden. And here, we're really exposing the environment as a whole in an immersive way, which I think is going to be thrilling for the audience. I mean, I think that, the sort of recent history of live TV musicals has sort of fluctuated between how live the whole thing feels and how much it feels like we're sort of on a movie or a television set. And some shows are more suited to what we're doing here. Rent is, a rock musical and exists in a way that can feel almost like a concert at times, but has so much narrative storytelling. Whereas something like, A Christmas Story, for example, I know that the vision was really to create something that was in a vacuum and very much sort of performed almost like a live feature film cut live. So I think that we have the opportunity here to blend the line between camera and audience and action in a new and unique way for this particular medium.
I want to talk about your rehearsal schedule. I mean, how many run-throughs are you guys doing, like full dress rehearsal run-throughs before the actual event on the 27th?
Totally. So it's now the 11th of January, and we've had 8 days on stage, I think, which means we've had the actors on stage, in and out of costume, moving through things without camera. At the end of each day, we sort of our incredible camera director, Alex Rosinski, sort of moves around with a camera and grabs a whole bunch of shots so as to begin the process of a draft in a way and understand what things might look like. But we don't start camera blocking rehearsals until next week. We'll run the show with every costume and set piece and actor and camera person and all of that. Only a couple of times before we do it on the live show. We'll do a dress rehearsal. We'll have a test audience. We'll do a dress rehearsal and then the live show. So maybe 3 times that we do it with every complete element. So not many at all, which, is interesting because a lot of us on the show, Michael Greif and Angela and myself, Sonia Taye, our incredible choreographer, we come from theater backgrounds, a lot of us, even though many of us have television experience and live TV experience. And you only get one chance to do this, which is wild when you think about a Broadway musical like Dear Evan Hansen, Michael's, most recent incredible project, which you get previews and an out-of-town tryout, and you get to really hone things in before you land it on opening night for everyone to come and to celebrate or, pick apart. So it's sort of a very limited number of chances, which
so
makes it
stressful. I love how you use the word thrilling. I'm thinking stressful. I'm like, my God, the stuff that I'm doing is, we shoot it, we edit it. It could be weeks before anybody sees it, and it's perfected. Like something like this live to the point where you're only doing 3 full run-throughs. That blows my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And it requires there are so many incredible chiefs in our camp, and and everyone really sort of brings the expertise and the weight of their department, and it requires a ton of coordination. But we have a brilliant team, and it's a very dedicated group. I mean, the first week that we were here, the art department was on stage from 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 or 11 at night. It was a lot of long days, and we have a brilliant team, and I have an incredible art director named Adam Rao, who is the savior of the show, and so it's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of, everyone sitting down. And the brilliant thing about this group is everyone comes at it from the point of view of, how do we tell this story in the most effective and emotional and beautiful and intimate way?
Have you yet, or have you since, did you kind of get to a point where you're kind of like, oh my God, I don't know if this is going to happen. Has it gotten to a point where you're almost like, oh my God, we have so much more to do and hardly any time to do it? Have you had like that freak out moment yet?
Not really. The one moment I did have, I like to say that when something beautiful like this happens in your life, like this is such a gift and such a dream come true, that I, for a long time was like, I really sort of won't believe that this is happening until that first rehearsal.
Yeah.
And, because you can design things and who knows, it's the casting and, who knows what could happen. And so the day that we walked into first rehearsal and I stood in front of everyone and Michael and Mark spoke about their vision for the show and introduced me to speak about the design, and I showed the entire cast, and it was just such an exciting day to share what we'd been working on for 4 or 5 months with them. And that was the day that it sort of became real, and that I sort of let my shoulders come down, only to say, okay, now we dig in and, finish the work, because we were headlong into the build at that point. But it was like, all right, we're in rehearsal. It's going to happen. And, now only 16 days away, it's definitely going to happen.
What are you doing talking to me? You should be rehearsing, for Christ's sakes.
I mean, yeah, it's a wild schedule and a wild sort of project, but you see sort of people rally together in really unique ways. It just, it's deadline based, right? And when you're on a deadline and it cannot be moved, it all sort of magically happens, and we're sort of blown away by the team and by our crews and what everyone's able to pull off.
Let's talk about Rule.com. Rule Boston Camera. Well, it's the place to go to purchase and rent all of your production equipment. I'm doing it all the time. I'm doing it tomorrow. How about that? I've got a shoot tomorrow, and for a big grocery store chain, which I'm very excited about, and we needed some equipment, right? So we, of course, rented from Rule. Now, here's the thing. We are renting equipment that we don't own. And because we don't own it, no matter how many times we've used it, we don't own it. So we don't have the knowledge of every single piece of this equipment, But I'm telling you right now, when I leave Rule with my equipment, I know they have my back. They've answered all of my questions. They made sure I fully understood the equipment that I'm taking with me. And that's important because you're under the gun. Clients are there. Time is money. Everything's crazy. It's a million people running around set. The last thing you want is to be confused about the piece of equipment that you have. You just don't want it. And when you leave Rule Boston Camera with your equipment, first of all, everything is in extremely good quality and in really good shape. So you're not going to be getting some crap equipment that somebody was, reckless with before you. No, that's not the case. Everything's taken care of impeccably well. And you understand what you're getting into. They have your back. They're supporting you. Now, add on top of that the fact that they have a huge world-class inventory of equipment. I mean, everything you can possibly imagine is there. We're talking about cameras, lenses, audio gear, lighting, grip gear. It's all there. Camera dynamics, communications, everything you need is there. So you have the combination of a world-class inventory, blending it with the attentive service that they provide to you, and you've got a winning formula. You certainly do. They've been at this for over 35 years. That's how great they are. That's how successful they are. And I know you guys are going to love it too. So head over there, Rule.com, RULE.com, and check it out. They've got a huge inventory to rent and buy, which I also do. And it's all there at Rule.com, RULE.com. As a production designer, you're probably one of the first people to get involved. And I'm curious when this started.
Not that long ago. I think I met with Michael and Mark and Adam in June or late May. So It wasn't very long ago at all. And I didn't know immediately that I was going to do it. We spoke, had a really good chat. We spoke again, and then decided to move forward. But Michael and I sort of began the design process one-on-one in June or July. And it was all really designed within a couple of weeks, pretty quickly. We started looping everyone in. We showed the whole team. We all sat down together. We made some adjustments, but we really had the bones of it after just a few meetings, which was really exciting. We really sort of hit it off. And it's actually our first time working together, me and Michael Greif. My first time working with actually every single person on this team. One of the first collaborators on a show typically is the set or production designer. Usually you've got, obviously the producer, the producing entity, and the director, and perhaps the choreographer also. And really getting to sit and work with Michael and work with Sonia and build the world of this and how we would use it was, an incredible part of the process. Every part of this process has honestly been incredible. And you don't say that about every show, that at every turn sort of you felt like you had the support and the investment of the entire team. People have cleared their lives for this show in a way that's really unique and special, from our cast all the way through our creative team. So it's been a thrill sort of watching everyone. I like a lot of lean in. I always say I like when people just sort of show up and give what they have. And I like to be that person as much as I can be. And every person on this team has done that.
How are you? Talk to me about the collaboration you have with the director, the director of photography, because the communication and collaboration between production designers and those people on films is certainly very, very close. I'd love to know what it's like on something like this, that theater adapted for TV, I guess you'd call it. I don't even know what to call it.
Yeah, I think, the unique thing about this is we could sit and stage an incredible theater experience inside this, this room where we're shooting Rent Live. And if we can't capture it on camera in a dynamic and a thrilling way, the majority of people in the world will not see it.
Yeah.
There are over 1,000, people who will see it live, in the space, but the amount of people who watch it at home will outnumber that exponentially. So
hold on. You're going to have 1,000 people in the live audience?
We're going to have over 1,000 people in the live audience.
Oh my God.
Supposed to say that. But anyway, it's going to be a lot of people.
No, you didn't hear that, guys. Keep it quiet. Keep it under your hats.
I'll get in trouble.
They're all, no. These are all production people. They will keep it quiet.
Of course.
They will keep it quiet.
No, I'm totally teasing. I'm sure that's not a spoiler. I think I've said that before. In any case, it's a lot of people, but it's not a lot of people compared to the folks who will get to watch it at home. So, it's all about how we capture the work that we're doing in that room. And even if it's a brilliant idea for one of those mediums, the live versus the live TV, it has to serve us both, and it has to really engage the energy of the room, but be captured in a dynamic way on camera. So the collaboration is very close. Michael, is the stage director, and Alex Rosinski is the camera director as their sort of build. The collaboration between the two of them, the three of us, the 10 of us as a creative team is so tight. I mean, we stand around in a circle and we contemplate a moment and we move people around, and it's a big, big puzzle. I mean, Alex and Michael and I worked inside of a 3D model of the show, looking at it from vantage points in computer and in digitally rendered sort of camera views with certain lenses for weeks in the summer, and looked at hours and hours and hours of planning and understanding and figuring out how shots could function. And, that's only the roughest of drafts. And then since then, there's been, all the time spent in the space understanding how camera might work, and more changes. And then there will be more changes when all of the cameras show up next week and we really understand what we're seeing. So it's this constant, what I love about it is, yes, we only get a couple of tries to do it, but every single choice that you'll see on Fox on January 27th is a 14th, 15th, 16th draft idea. Every single thing has been considered. So every garment, every set piece, every camera move has been considered so precisely, because we only have one chance to get it right. There's room for spontaneity in the performance. The performances have to feel like they're happening for the very first time, but the rest of us need to be doing a very tight, beautiful dance.
I'm glad that you said that about the spontaneity and performance, because with all of this going on, it almost sounds like you're narrowing the ability of the talent, because everything has to be so perfect and they have to hit their marks in an even more precise way because of everything that's going on. But it's exciting to hear that there is room for that. And that makes me even more excited to see what they bring to it.
Yeah, I mean, every performance you've ever seen that you've loved has an element of spontaneity and an element of choreography. Whether you're aware of either is, either at your benefit or at your behest. So, the last thing we want to watch is anyone who moves around like a robot. But to nail that perfect light cue or that beautiful button at the end of a number, people have to be where they're planned to be because they're lit that way. And then we plan for buffers. You say, in a moment, if we think that there's sort of a sort of a comedic gag. I don't know that there's an example of this kind of thing specifically in Rent, but you put that person on a follow spot, which means that there's a light and a person attached to that light following that person, so that there is an element of they can go where they need to go to make this moment funny in the energy of the room, etc. You can create that. Maureen does a performance art piece in the show, which typically, on Broadway, I think featured a fair amount of sort of ad lib and working with the audience. And that character here is played by Vanessa Hudgens, who's brilliant in this part. And she is bringing, so many new things to it every time that I know that we're really creating an opportunity for her to do the show as scripted and to hit her marks, but also really like live and breathe and invest in that moment and react off, the energy of it happening live. So it's going to be thrilling. I mean, hearing this cast can sing the hell out of this.
Yeah.
And they're incredible actors and they're incredible just performers all around, dancers, my God. And they and every time we run a scene, they bring something new to it. So I think that even for me, who's now seen them do iterations and versions and drafts of these things so many times, I think the live show will be very, very live, even for those of us who have been living with it for 2 months.
They're singing live?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. And there's a live band in the room.
I think a lot of people, just people that I've talked to leading up to this interview, it's amazing how many people are like, they say it's live, but it really can't be. It's got to be pre-recorded. I kid, how many people have said that to me it's pretty incredible. And I'm like, no, I think it's like for real.
Yeah, I think that some of the earlier live TV musicals, which were a bit more sort of felt like more filmic in a way, or more proscenium, and there was less of a sense of sort of the live audience or the live band or what have you. You could imagine that you weren't quite sure, and maybe because they were done so beautifully and they were very slick and all of that. But really, the show is entirely live in every way, and they all sing live, and they all dance live, and they all race around live, and costume changes, and all of that. There's really no element of it that isn't happening in that room, for real.
I am a huge RuPaul's Drag Race fan, so Valentina's been on my mind. How is she to work with?
Oh my God, she's been a dream. It's I was less familiar with her. I'm very familiar with the show, but just not as diehard as having watched every season and every episode. And so it was really exciting to meet her, and I think she's bringing a warmth and a humor and a sincere investment in the character that's needed. Angel is at the heart and soul of the story, and that character is really an emotional crux of the film, and is one of my favorite characters. As a young gay person, watching Collins and Angel sing a love song to each other was life-changing for me. I'd seen a gay couple in a movie in maybe The Birdcage, and that was about it. But other than that, only as parody, and never in a sort of sweet and tender way, certainly not on a Broadway stage. And it was, absolutely life-changing. And I think that Valentina is bringing just such an insane work ethic and a beautiful spirit to the part. I mean, she sings and dances and acts the hell out of it. And she's opposite Brandon Victor Dixon, who is like a voice from the heavens. I mean, it's outrageous. We heard him sing the I'll Cover You reprise yesterday, and there was not a dry eye in the house. We were a mess.
It's been 20 years since Rent premiered on Broadway, and our world has changed a lot. How do the issues that are discussed and tackled in Rent apply to our world now?
I mean, are there that many changes though, right? In a world where we're limiting the rights of immigrants to this country, where there are attacks on people of color every day, where trans people's rights are being limited left, right, and center. I don't know. I think that in pop culture, there's more representation in Hollywood and entertainment in the bubble of which I am happy and certainly very privileged to sort of reside. There's more sort of safe space in that way. But the president, the government at large, the world we live in, I don't know that we've come quite as far as we think. I mean, the sort of blatant racism, sexism, attacks on women. It's just, I think that this show, the way it celebrates otherness, the way it celebrates community, the way it speaks and establishes empathy is as relevant today as it's ever been, and important in a way because we lost a generation of gay men and of other people in the AIDS crisis, and memorializing them and understanding what that time was like and what it means now for a gay person who's able to come out when they're in high school and forge their own path and begin their life in authentic earnest so much earlier because of the sacrifices that so many other people have made. I think that the show's hugely important. I say that, my 12-year-old niece, Abby, saw Bohemian Rhapsody this year, the film, and didn't know Queen at all and fell in love with Queen and Freddie Mercury and is a diehard fan, obsessed, knows more about them than anyone,
Wow.
knows all the music. She is living for Queen right now. And it will be the moment of satisfaction for me if she watches this and decides to download the cast album and is moved by it and is taken by it the way that I was when I was her age. So I think there's an opportunity here to inspire a new generation and sort of remind people of, the benefit of coming together with your neighbor and forming a community of people who are maybe not exactly alike.
That is so true. And it's really interesting to see that these issues that are being tackled now and the differences over the past 20 years. And I feel like I live on the coast, I'm in Boston. Me personally, I feel like it's easier to be who I am now than it was then. I was also, a teenager at the time. So certainly a lot changes over 20 years in a person's life. But it's amazing to think about how many issues Rhett was trying to tackle back then and still doing it now. It really is.
Yeah. And I think one of the beautiful things about it, and I've spoken with Julie Larson, who's Jonathan Larson, the author's sister, and an executive producer on our show, is that the show doesn't come to you with those messages as sort of like hot button topics, right? It comes to you with authentic characters who happen to sort of, live and breathe and be a part of those sort of themes and those issues and those groups who, need so much more representation and need visibility and deserve sort of the equal care and rights of everyone else. And I think that's what's beautiful about it, is it just sort of, Rent is about people sort of and their chosen families and the way that they come together to persevere. And I think that there's something beautiful about this group of people who historically have maybe been disenfranchised and come together and celebrate each other and form a beautiful family. And it's resonant today. It was resonant 20 years ago. And I think it'll be resonant 20 years from now.
In our last few minutes, I want to talk about some of your other work. Of course, Rent on Fox live January 27th, 2019. So those of you listening to this afterwards, you can go and find it somewhere, I'm sure. But it's going to be at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So 8
Yes.
Eastern, January 27th on Fox. Super excited for that. And of course, you can get all the details at the show notes at gocreativeshow.com. Now, I want to talk about some of your other work. Specifically the Sam Smith stuff, because you've done so much work with him. You've done his tours, you've done his TV performances, you did his show on the Brit Award, SNL. So you've really taken his, visual branding, I guess, for performance and spread it across multiple different mediums. And I'd love to talk about sort of how you do that and keep consistency across all of these different elements.
Absolutely. I mean, the sort of short version or the long story long version of this story is that, Sam began working on his, was prepping to release his second album, and somewhere in the year before that began working with an incredible creative producer named Lee Lodge. And Lee and Sam were sort of speaking about having a theatrical designer come on to create space for the tour. And, so they were taking some meetings and getting to know some people. And Sam and I had a lunch and really, really hit it off as young gay men under 30. A lot of mutual interests, shared love of disco. And I brought him a bunch of images and I said, listen, if I were designing something based off of your first album, because I hadn't heard the second album, I said, this is what I would do. And I was a fan of his music, and I had actually turned my family on to being fans of his music long before this. So it was sort of yet another kind of heart project for me, something that mattered, something that had moved me even before I even dreamt of being involved with it. And we just really, really hit it off. And then I went to London and sat with Sam, and he played the whole album for me in the recording studio. And then I took pages and pages of notes with a thick black Sharpie, and just writing down lyrics and words. And Sam would speak to me about certain images, and then sort of came back with just an idea, a thought for the tour that Lee and I began shaping, and Sam and I began refining, and all of us were sort of a beautiful team. And we knew that there were going to be a lot of sort of campaign appearances as part of, the lead up to things. And so we began to develop kind of we had the design for the tour, which was one of the final things that happened. And we wanted the performances that led up to it to feel of the world of the tour, but not in direct sort of reference to it. The first performance that we did together was on Saturday Night Live, and Sam and I had talked about torch songs. I had said that Sam's really music always felt like sort of reaching out into the void. And so we were looking at Judy Garland references, and there's this fabulous reference from A Star Is Born of Judy against this, like, it looks like a wall of sort of like crushed roses. And so we created this kind of little trailway of roses where Sam was at the end of it for him to sing this torch song on SNL. And so the language began to develop from there, of sort of a simplicity and intimacy honing in on him, a certain elegance and a classic quality, always something tactile, never relying on like a video wall as the primary element. And so, we began to develop a vocabulary that way. And it was really Sam and Lee and I sort of creating a visual language and figuring out, what the best way to sort of express the emotion of the song was. And it was a beautiful, long-term collaboration that turned into a wonderful friendship.
You are listening to the PremiumBeat.com Song of the Week. It's called Epic Moments by Immersive Music. Premium Beat is the place to go for all of your royalty-free music and sound effects, just like this. This, of course, is in the trailers category. You can see why. Head over to PremiumBeat.com and access a collection of thousands of royalty-free tracks for as low as $69 each. First of all, that price is craziness for the quality you get, but also you don't just get the song. You get so much more. You get cut downs, you get loops, you get stems. And what that really gives you is the ability to customize the track to fit your project perfectly. Perfectly. But it's all about quality, and that's also what you'll find over at PremiumBeat.com. I've been using them for years. I will continue to use them for years because I love the quality of the music. So head over there, PremiumBeat.com, and check out this song, the Song of the Week, Epic Moments by Immersive Music. All right, let's take a quick break and talk about Shutterstock. So I use Shutterstock for much, much, much more than just getting, stock footage for a video. In fact, just this week, I'm putting together a pitch deck for a project that I'm bidding on. And telling you right now, a lot of the photos and a lot of the video clips that I'm going to be using as references to explain the visual direction that I'm going for, I found at Shutterstock. Not going to lie. I go there for inspiration, but I go there to help me put together these pitch decks, and I strongly encourage you to too. Nothing helps you sell your project more than a visual example of what you're trying to sell. And Shutterstock's such a great place for it because they have images, they've got footage. A lot of the clips they have are in 4K too, which is fantastic. And they have a brand new video collection called Shutterstock Select. Now, here's where we really get into that beautiful cinematic work. So you go to Shutterstock.com /video, and right under footage, you click on Shutterstock Select. And this is going to be giving you, it's going to be serving up the best of the best on Shutterstock.com. Now, we're talking about the most cinematic, the most beautiful footage that they have available, curated in categories that are perfect and relevant. This is the place to go. Now, yes, it is a little bit more expensive per clip, but you're getting what you pay for. And if nothing else, it will give you some inspiration to possibly something that you can create on your own. So I strongly encourage you to check that out, as well as all of their other great products. They've got images, they've got a whole editorial section, they've got a great blog, music, all of it. It's all there at Shutterstock.com. So check it out, Shutterstock.com. The Sam Smith World Tour has this iconic architecture, I guess you could say. It's almost like a logo, sort of, but it's not. I don't want to give it that word because it sort of downplays the importance of it, but it's this very tall, thin triangle with like a circle behind it, and it's consistent across the whole tour and really becomes the iconic piece throughout. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about kind of how you came to this design, what it meant, and if it had some sort of significance to, his album or something going on in his life or anything, because it's throughout the whole thing and it's beautiful. And for you guys too, you can check out all this stuff over at Jason's site, jasonsherwooddesign.com. All the photos are there.
The tour design came from a lighthouse reference. I had said something about, Sam's songs it's a lighthouse mentality. It's a single light reaching out into the darkness, waiting for something to come back. And we started talking about that. And when I said that out loud, Lee Lodge was actually like, I have a lighthouse tattoo. And then we started talking about that. And then we were like, well, what's sort of the counterpoint to a lighthouse idea? And it's a moon or a sun or an eclipse or something like that. And so that language evolved from a literal space to sort of be a thing. And I was in London and I looked out my window and there was the shard, the piece of architecture. And so we sort of merged the idea of a lighthouse with this shard and sort of formed this object. And we wanted it to be something that would sort of feel like a precious monument. And then it actually, throughout the course of the show, it changes. The exterior of it rips away and reveals itself to be fabric. And it reveals sort of a golden staircase at the middle. The whole thing opens up like a giant, sort of almost like two huge flower petals that extend out over the audience's heads and then sort of closes back up. So we wanted there to be this unfolding sense to it. And this sort of like giant kind of totemic, almost like, there's something like mythic about giant shapes like that and sort of what they could be and this sort of tower and this there's something like a monument about it and that felt like the way the sort of gravitas of Sam's themes of love and of loss and of moving on. And so it began from there, but really it was, I drew a triangle and I drew a circle behind it. And, that's the drawing that's on all of the hats and t-shirts and coffee mugs and merchandise and programs and all of that at the show. So it just really became a symbol that we really fell in love with.
And Sam's body. I saw on your Instagram, he got it tattooed on his, on his torso.
He did. We went out for drinks one night and he said something about doing that like a year and a half ago. And I was like, oh my God, Sam. And then he texted me one day and he was like, look what I did. And I was like, you're so nuts. That's who he is. I mean, it's so personal and it's so emotional and he's so, fiercely devoted to the music and to how it's presented to the fans. And he's a beautiful, beautiful soul.
What I found particularly interesting about that set design is how small, well, not small, but how tight the band is. Like, you're really focusing the view directly to the center. All the leading lines are pointing towards Sam. Everything's, centered around this small cluster of people where Sam and the band are all there. And I don't see that very much in concerts. Usually there's this large swath of places where people can be, and your eyes kind of go everywhere. This feels very directed and very pointed. And I thought that was a unique take on a live concert show.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the stage is a very, very slender triangle. It's almost a shadow of that tower, right? As if the moon were behind it, and it casts a long, long, skinny shadow into the room. So it's basically two runways that form a triangle, and the area between them are a series of lifts that house the band, and the band is able to lower or raise so we can lose them entirely. The goal was always to get Sam as close to the fans as possible. So when he's out at the tip of that triangle, he's in the middle of the arena. He's all the way, he's 150 feet into the middle of the room.
Wow.
And that much closer to people. And we were able to create like 4 times the amount of front row seats for the show by creating that stage relationship, because so many people could be closer to him and be closer to the music, which was always the goal. Intimacy was the word of the project.
Is there something that you learned from the Sam Smith show that you brought to Rent?
Oh gosh, totally. I
No.
mean, Sam's was my first music tour that I'd ever designed, and I'll and I'm working on some other ones coming up, which I'm excited about. But there's a lot about audience relationship, how where the performers are, where the audience is, what the alchemy is there, and sort of how you get people to engage. I mean, Sam's fans come, and you could be in a parking lot and they're going to go wild because they love him, and he delivers such a beautiful show. But facilitating an environment, my job is to create something beautiful and evocative that tells the story. Yes, that's visual, but really I have to create a relationship where the music, the story, the words, the play can be received by the audience in a way that is conducive to the narrative, whether that means that it's comfortable and relaxed, or that means that it's aggressive and intense, or whatever the moment sort of asks for. I'm supposed to sort of facilitate that relationship in space. And so I learned a lot about that watching, 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden lose their minds for him, and sort of see where the sort of the evening sort of crescendoed and decrescendoed, and where the rises and falls were of the whole thing. And so it's, there was a lot to learn there, particularly about that relationship.
Same question for Rent. What lesson have you learned from Rent that you'll take to your next project?
Hundreds. Al Gurdon, who's the lighting designer on the show and has a gazillion incredible credits and is so accomplished, was saying, I learned so many new things on each of these that I do. And, this one's really about sort of the world of camera. I mean, it's just such a precise thing. And we've learned so much along the process, and Alex Rosinski has guided us really, really carefully towards success. And it's been sort of a great joy getting to understand that different part of it. I love the way we're able to just change the point of view, the perspective. We're able to reinvent and reinvent and reinvent. It means that the work that I do has to be all the more dimensional and all the more sort of multifaceted, so that it can be sort of taken in and enjoyed from different angles.
Do you have aspirations to production design for film?
Perhaps, I've always been primarily interested in things that occurred live in some form: concerts, plays, musicals, operas, performance pieces, whatever, because there's this vitality. There's no way to cheat. Not to say that any production designer in film or filmmaker is cheating, but I like the spontaneity of it. And I like that you can't fix anything in post, and you can't, do anything sort of afterwards in green screen or any of that. But I think primarily the work that I like to do is creating worlds that aren't very real. They can have real like elements, but they aren't sort of grounded in naturalism, and lots of films are. So I think if it were an epic or something otherworldly or something abstract, I would love to do a feature. I'm less interested in sort of, all I want to do is watch a Diane Keaton, Nancy Meyers film, but I'm less interested in designing one.
Well, Rent is going to be live on Fox January 27th at 8 Eastern. Wow. This is going to be an event, and I'm so happy that you came on the show to talk about it. You kept enough secrets, but you did give us a little taste. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Where can people go online to find out more about you?
My website is jasonsherwooddesign.com, and on Instagram, I'm at Jason Sherwood Design, and Instagram's probably the place to find me. Lots of behind the scenes fun stuff that we do on there. And Rent on Fox. We're live on January 27th. Please watch and enjoy, and send us some love.
We will. And your Instagram is awesome, so you guys should follow that. I'll put links to all of it in the show notes at gocreativeshow.com. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show, and good luck.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Jason Sherwood. What a great guest. I just throw K's in for no apparent reason. I don't know what's going on with me. It's my Invisalign. I swear to God, it's ruining everything. It's making my teeth nicer. Jason Sherwood, of course, the production designer for Rent live on Fox, and so much more. You can find him at jasonsherwooddesign.com, and I'll put all the links in the show notes for you guys. I also want to direct your attention to Matt Russell, because he mixes and masters and makes the show sound so good. He can do the same thing for you. I use him for all my video production work also. He's fantastic. His prices are great and super talented, and I encourage you hire him too. You can find him at gainstructure.com and on Twitter at gainstructure. While you're on Twitter, you can tweet us at Go Creative Show. Let us know what you think of the show. And support our sponsors, Hedge.video, Rule Boston Camera, News Shooter, Shutterstock, and Premium Beat. Support those that support us. Bye-bye.